All right. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you
Hi,
can hear.
Brandon.
Hey, Job.
Hi.
Is my screen up with the agenda for today?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, for joining. This is actually the fourth of our training sessions that we're working through, and this is not really a training session, but more designed as an opportunity for everybody to think about workshop implementation. So beyond just what the tool is, for the process technical facilitators and regional leads to now have a discussion around how we're going to implement these workshops, and also with the data support that might come, particularly in pre-population of modules 1 and 2. So with that in mind, the agenda that we have is just any updates on EIA, because a lot of us haven't met in a few weeks now. I'll go through some of the quick changes that have happened since the third training session that we had 2 weeks ago. Hopefully we might hear about some data support for pre-population. Some of that is ongoing. Some of it is still awaiting locations. And then what I'd like to do is to break into the regional teams in breakout rooms and just have quick discussions amongst yourselves around what you need now to move forward and implement these workshops. Hopefully I can see we've got a fair few regional leads on the call, and then some process and technical facilitators. So hopefully you'll be able to have a good discussion and then come back and report on what you need to move forward. So that's what we've got planned at the moment. With that in mind, Job or Wanjiku, did you have anything that you wanted to bring up before we get started?
Yes.
Yeah,
Wanjiku,
good
go
morning.
ahead.
Okay, thank you, Job. Good morning, Brandon. Good morning, everybody. There's really no major update from my end, but I really just want to thank everybody for the commitment and participation in the technical training that has happened. And just to reiterate that this is a really important process for us. It is really informing how we continue to implement this initiative and also how we plan for the second business cycle. Today's session is also critical because how we conduct the workshops will determine what we get out of the workshops, which is what we get out of the workshops and how we use that information. So being able to have some consistency across the regions will be important, so that then we can look at and compare the information we're getting, and look at it consistently across all the regions. So really just to thank you, and we are happy and here to support the process. Look forward to seeing where we end, and really looking forward to their workshops. I think most of them are planned for September and October, so this is really crunch time. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say for now. And just to say, Bernard will be back next week. So I think he'll be really pleased to see the progress that we have made while he has been on leave, and even seeing, the workshops taking off and the shape that this area of work has taken. So thanks, Brandon, for the leadership. Thanks to everybody who has, made given this the attention it deserves. So we really do look forward to a good outcome. Thank you, and back to you, Brandon.
Thanks very much, Wanjiku. Job, did you have anything else, or we should move ahead?
Thanks, Brandon, and thanks, Wanjiku. I think we can move ahead. And just to say, the last few days we have been discussing about the EIA solutions, and this PAiCE tool, we consider it as one of the important EIA solutions or frameworks to lead dialogues. We are preparing next week. Several of us will be at AGRF in Dar es Salaam, and we are going to be presenting some of these solutions as EIA outcomes. So just to say, this is a very important outcome, Brendan and team, and let's continue and use it to inform what we are going to be doing in the regions. Otherwise, thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you, Job, and thank you, Wanjiku. We'll move ahead to the next element here. And I don't want to take very long on this because I know we have people who are not necessarily implementing, but who have oversight. But just to quickly go through what we've been doing in the training session is trying to take feedback from people who are being trained around what needs to change in the tool, making sure at every step of the way there is some participation in how the tool works, looks, is being asked, etc. So I just wanted to quickly outline some of the changes that have happened since we had our last training in terms of the third module. I realize this is a little bit small, but this is essentially the module that analyzes each of the adaptation options. And some of the things that we talked about that have been incorporated. The first one is you can see some orange boxes that say click for clarifications. So what that will do is feed through to a definitions and clarifications page, so it's clear what you need to consider in each of these elements. Otherwise, we talked about when we were looking at percentage improvements, making clear what we were comparing to. Was it current yield or the climate impacted yield? We have looked at the cost of implementation, which was absent before. We've tried to look a little bit more and break down around the actual adoptability of each of the potential adaptation options, around upfront costs, around labour requirements, and around new skills that will be needed. And in the future context, we've changed that around a bit to also look at how important it would be to have government or private sector input, and change the wording of the private sector question to around a business case for private sector investment. So those are some of the key changes that have occurred, many of which came from participants and their suggestions. We talked about the definitions page. So this is what it'll look like. I'm still completing it, but basically if you were to click on one of these, it will take you through to a glossary page. It will say, these are the things you should consider, and then you will click on that and it will return back to where you were. So it's trying to make sure that for each of those elements, we know exactly what we should be doing. And you can click that in front of the workshop if you're facilitating, read it out, have a discussion, and then go back if you get stuck. The other key request was around making clear when we're doing the weightings for the final outcome of the tool, having some information around what each of the components were. So we've included that column there that indicates when you're weighting, these are the elements from that page that you're weighting for. This is empty, but the last thing that we need to put in, and I'm working with Andy McDonald on this, is making really clear around the limitations of the tool, because there are some substantial limitations, things like crossover between different interactions or uncertainties that come, and the fact that we need to put numbers to things. So we want to make that really clear and not shy away from the fact that this tool can't do everything, especially when it needs to be implemented in a one-day workshop. And we want to list them out so that everybody walks away clear of what they get from PAiCE and what they don't get from PAiCE. And the last one is around those next steps. So we've talked a lot about the fact that the tool is a starting point, and we can keep returning to the tool, but the tool does not do everything. It will not just tell you what to do and you should go and do it, but there's more nuance, understanding, discussion, and programming that come after that. So that's the last bit that we need to integrate into the tool to make sure that, again, when you finish this workshop, it's not the end of the journey. It's simply a starting point and an intermediary point into climate adaptation programming. So those are the key updates that have occurred. What we really want to do, or what I hope that we can get from this next discussion now, is more tangibly around workshop implementation. But I think before that, I will stop sharing, because according to the agenda, I think we were going to transfer over to Pete, who's already been working with many of you around pre-population. And Pete, I just wanted to open the floor to you as to how that's been going, if you want to give an overview of what you can and can't provide, or just to have some interaction with the participants.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. Yes, so for those of you in the West Africa region, I have received, I can't share my screen, but there is a, let me just share a link to a document, put that in the chat. So there is this technical working group document, and one of the sheets in here lists the sort of platforms and the boundary descriptions where the platforms are. For example, we have NG Akalimo in Western Central Africa, and this mentions all the regions in Nigeria, or the sort of administrative areas in Nigeria where this project intends to work.
Pete, I'm going to be really rude. Sorry, I've added you as a presenter, so if you try and share,
great, I can share now.
It should come up.
Yeah, super. Right. So what I've been doing is, so on this sheet, let me just zoom in a bit so we can actually see it on our screens. Okay, so this is the region. This is one of the proposed platforms that might relate to a kind of production system. This is the geography of focus, so these regions in Nigeria. So what I've been doing for initially is to present, summarize production statistics for these areas. There should be a link to a OneDrive folder. And in here we have the production statistics for the region. So let's see, what have we got here? This one was called NG Akalimo. So we've got the production statistics for different commodities. These come from the MapSpan 2017, the most recent update we have of that product. And so for different administrative, now which one is this? This is admin 0. So this is for the entire country. So this is for the entire area that is selected. You've got your value of production, different commodities, your harvested area, and your total production. You've got the total value of, what is this? I'll put some metadata in there. What I need to do is put some metadata in here so you can easily interpret what all of those fields mean. But basically what we've got is the value of production for different commodities within the region and the percentages of those. And we've got this at admin 0 level if you want to start. There's an interest in prioritizing by individual areas. So what could we do with this? Well, we can filter this. Maybe we are interested in what, maybe we're interested in, I don't know, a particular administrative area, Cross River. We're interested in which crops have the highest harvested area. And so in Cross River, we ignore the total because that's all crops combined. So let's just get rid of total. Some of these are aggregated categories. I've asked Enrique Scratcher Wood to provide a table that describes what all of these products are, because some of them are groups, and I will include this in the metadata of these files as well, so you can easily understand when it says oil crops, what exactly they mean by oil crops. So here I would advise just looking at individual products. So here we can see in Cross River, the individual product that's not a combined MapSpan category, which is summing multiple crops together, is yams followed by cassava. These are aggregate categories we can ignore. So the next is oil palm, maize, and rice. So you can start to see which crops are the most important for particular administrative areas or your total area for the proposed for the proposed values that have been given to me from the technical working group for region document. So this has been done for all of the platforms suggested, which you can find. Which you can find in this folder, which is linked to in that spreadsheet. So I will, yeah. So that's getting there. I just need to, again, increase the usability of that by providing you with, what I'll do is I'll put in this folder a little README, which will probably just be a Word doc with like a screen grab of the spreadsheet and then an explanation of this field is this, explanation of what the crops are, a link to the map spam methodology. So if you have questions about what on earth is map spam, why are we using this, then you can go to the map spam website and look at their methodology. So we're using map spam because this is probably the only data set we can find with production information for that covers all of Africa. There may be national production data sets that you think are better to use for your use case. If that's the case, it might be, I don't know how we could assist you there. Like either you can do your own analysis on your own national statistics if you've got a really good data set for Nigeria you want to use, or you can maybe reach out to me and I can see if I can help you with wrangling that data set into the format you need if it's if it's not presented, if it's presented as a spatial data set or something and you need to do spatial extractions and operations on the data set, we can certainly assist with that. But if it's a spreadsheet in tabular form, you're probably better off yourself just creating a pivot table or some kind of filter to get the information that you need to start prioritizing which are the most important commodities in the areas that I have my platform is considering to work in. Now, from this, the next task is for some of the major crops in these regions. We can present you with some climate information. If for the historical, at least for the historical time period, I don't know, Brendan, do we need to be looking at future climate scenarios? It adds a lot of extra work if we are, or is it sufficient to look at what are the hazards that are currently being experienced?
The tool in theory is asking for expectations over the period of the coming 10 years. So it is in theory future. Yeah.
Okay, so we could, provide some information on hazards for 2030. We've got a 20-year period that's centered on 2030. So it's looking at the CMIP 6 downscale bias corrected models for 2020 to 2040.
That would be fine. Yep.
So what I would do is for each of these, whatever they're called in here, sort of give too many things. For each of these different platforms that have been suggested for the regions, for these total areas, I can pick out the maybe three most important crops. Let's see, and provide some information on maybe 2 or 3 of the major hazards that those crops might be facing. So we might probably keep it simple. So it might be looking at total precipitation during the growing season, increases in temperature, that sort of thing. That's a limited. We can provide. It's a limited amount of information that we can provide. So if you've got specific hazards, they're like, oh, it's the number of, I don't know, it's the difference between daytime and nighttime temperature 1 month after planting for coffee or something, then we don't have that specific level of information. So if you've got very specific hazards for the commodities in your areas, then that's something you'll need to find your own information for, or maybe we can help you, link you with other people we know that might be able to provide you with more specific data for more specific commodities if you can't find it yourself. We're part of a wider network of climate modelers and climate adaptation specialists. But yeah, we can give some generic indications as how big might precipitation challenges be in rain-fed systems, how much temperatures might be increasing or exceeding particular thresholds for particular crops. So that is to come. I've just started working on Sawana. I received this recently. The administrative boundaries that I have from the GADM dataset do not match with these names, so I'm just trying to download a more standard administrative boundary dataset to try and align with what's been written here. And hopefully I'll be able to at least get the production statistics ready for Sawana over the next, or today actually. That's what I was doing this morning before I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be in this meeting.
Perfect. Thanks, Pete, for that overview. I think there's a few things to cover there. So the first one is Pete can't progress anything for you without knowing the boundaries and areas that the workshops are in. So we've seen up there that we've got Sawana and we've got West Africa, but we do need still for East and Southern Africa. And my understanding would be that South Asia and Southeast Asia, you have your own capacity to pre-populate. But I guess what I would say is Pete is also a really good link. He might know people if you are struggling for particular data. He might know people or data sets that he can direct you towards without actually doing the pre-population for you. So think about what capacity you have and then what assistance you might need in terms of that process. The other thing is that Pete's doing a great job providing some assistance here and some stats where he can, but you still need to think about the localization of those for production domains, particularly depending on the level that the data is coming from. So if you, for instance, are just doing lowlands, it's going to be very hard to have shapefiles or otherwise, or the level of data required for quite specific production domains. So you do need to think about that localization where necessary in that. I think those were the key things. Do people have any questions for Pete while we've got him here? Sama?
It's not a question, it's just note, because as I know that we should use some local statistics or national statistics, where this is what we are preparing now for Sawana region, especially for the irrigated platform. Should we continue with this national one? Is it preferred, or you prefer to use something or regional or something like that?
I think if you've got your own regional statistics that are tailored to your context, and you have the time to be able to analyze those using this exercise, then yes, by all means use those. I think it would be better. MapSpam, MapSpam is based on sort of subnational reporting of production information to the FAO, I think. And then it kind of, it takes this admin 1 level production and then tries to allocate it to areas of crop production using suitability maps and layers of, spatial layers of crop production areas. So it's like a kind of heuristic model. It's the best that we have for sub-Saharan Africa, and it's quite easy to understand, but it does have its biases and limitations. So, yeah.
I would support Pete there as well, Samar and Sawana. If you have some data sets that you trust, that you already work with or that you're familiar with, I think that would be the best approach, because the the level as well. So talking about production domains as opposed to shapefiles and level 0, level 1, it might get a little bit complex. So we do what we can to the best we can. So in some cases, that's going to be the best data set we can use. In others, and it sounds like maybe in Sewana, you've got your own data sets that you're confident and happy with. I'd be happy for you to pursue them.
Okay, my question here is about for how many years? So when we use the tool, PAiCE tool, we just agreed that we can just base on the last 3 years of the production. So what we are doing now in statistics we are going to having the average of the last 3 years, for example, for the production of different crops. Is it a good practice, or we should increase the lives the data series?
No, I think we agreed in that module 1 for the last 3 years, but I also understand Sewana is part of that will be quite volatile, particularly because of inflation. So we can have a specific discussion, maybe just with the Sewana group, around how we might adjust for the fact that inflation is quite problematic in how the tool will be calculated.
Okay, thanks, Brandon.
Great. Tesfaye.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Peter. So my question is a bit of a confirmation clarification stuff, because when we're trying to do this analysis, we selected a system, a farming system, for example, the highland mixed in the case of East Africa, and the maize mixed in the case of Southern Africa. But now the challenge is we also have some use cases, and as a subset of this system, we actually can have data because we are generating data for different reasons. But that is a subsystem level, like district level in both cases. So when we are trying to generate this data, shall we ignore those district level data and just focus on the system level data, which is the maize mixed for Southern Africa and highland mixed for Eastern Africa? Or shall we reduce our area to actually those subsystem areas where we have actual data for the use cases, and maybe that way it's very likely we get better quality data and maybe better quality output from the analysis. So it's just a confirmation. I know it's not going to be a yes or no kind of answer from you guys, but just to have a brief view from your side on that.
I can go first. My view would be if you have district level data, and the way that I would see a production domain is an aggregate of multiple districts. You're not going to go down below district for the analysis that we're doing. And from what I heard from Pete before, that data that Pete is working with is not at district level, but more at like provincial, subnational level. So, but I think it's again about what's the data that we have the most trust in to move forward with this, and what's the balance of good versus bad in the different data sets that we have. Pete, what would be your opinion there?
So one thing I can do, admin 1, that's the country level. Sorry, admin 0, that's the country level or total area. Admin 1, which is the major group administrative areas in a country in Kenya, that would be counties. And I can do admin 2, which is, this is built into the tool, which would be sub-counties in Kenya. So we could probably do district level there. I think it would depend for the other question on how much coverage you have for your district level data. So if it's quite a large production area and you've only got coverage of a small percentage of it, then maybe we should think about using the sort of more generic kind of global data sets. If you've got reasonable coverage of it, then yeah, maybe we can go with the district level analysis.
So I think then the answer to that test fire comes back to having the production domains defined for Eastern and Southern Africa. So if I understand correctly, you've got the Chinyanga Triangle in Southern Africa and you've got the mixed highlands in Ethiopia as the two production domains.
Yes.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. What we would
Yes,
need
you're
then
right.
is the districts or counties, or for each of the whatever they're called in each of the countries, for you to have a look at. Do you have sufficient coverage there? But I would also suggest that the data that you might have is not going to cover both modules 1 and module 2. So it would still be great to use PAiCE, because I doubt that you have, for instance, the climatic estimations in the data sets that you have. So what we really need is 2 Excel tools filled for each of those production domains. And it's the pre-module, module P, that sets out the districts that are in that production domain, so that we then have a clear picture of the location, so that can then progress.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Perfect.
In terms of,
yeah,
Brendan. So for me, it's when I can give. I said I create some fairly generic hazards for what appear to be the most important crops in the I don't know, the geographies that are being selected. I can try and do something that's much more tailored to each workshop. If the workshops could give me information, if they're having discussion and it turns out that these are the important crops and these are the threats or the hazards that we think are the key ones for these. And if there's that kind of, the next stage might be getting the information for those hazards. So if that could be collected from those workshops and disseminated to me, I can see. Again, I can't promise that I can answer every one of those, but it might be that we're able to support at least providing the information quickly on some of those hazards, especially if, like, the generic ones that I've provided, people think that's not useful. That's not what I want to know.
great. Thanks, Pete. So Willatau, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so
Yeah,
Peter, the last point you mentioned is very important, because in our group, what I was thinking is we are going to have a technical working group meeting on the data that we extracted so far, and also try to discuss the key climate hazards that we need to populate. And then we wanted to reach out, to you, if you can, support and populate each of the workshops demand, So maybe the idea was to have a meeting this week, but most people are not available and in holiday. So sometime next week we will have a technical working group meeting for each workshops to see if what you extracted is acceptable, if we have another spatial layers or data at the platform level, and then if we need to have a specific data requirement for each commodity and platform, we wanted to take notes and share to you. So I think that's our plan.
Great. Thanks, Willatau. I think, the important thing is there to actually get together yourselves and understand where you're at in that pre-population process as well. Are there other queries? Was it Raju? Did you want to raise something before?
Yes. And means just first question to Peter. I think it means you have any information for South Asia or especially India. Am I audible?
For India, no, because we considered that the national data for India is far superior to anything that I could offer you. I know you've got very, very good long-term production statistics at admin 2 level, I believe. If you need those data sets, there's I can put you in touch, or you want some assistance, I can put you in touch with the South Asia Adaptation Atlas that are working on creating a data portal that should provide you with this type of information. The data portal isn't ready yet, it's in production, but they have all the data sets at their fingertips.
I mean, not for module 1, any production data, crops, all these things are available very well. But regarding climatic hazards, that too crop-specific climatic hazards, not generic in nature. Otherwise, we have some climate change atlas is there, vulnerability risk assessment atlas, vulnerability atlas. Such outputs are available, but the agriculture system as a whole, they are considered, not crop specific. For example, if you say some climatic hazards like extreme rainfall, so the extreme rainfall we considered in India for whole system agriculture may not be fitting well for rice, because whatever extreme rainfall thresholds we have considered, that may not hold good for rice, which is a high water requirement crop. So, for example, that particular thresholds may work for rain-fed crops like soybean, maize, such crops like that. So, you have any identified climatic hazards like important crops for important crops, and along with some thresholds in for different seasons. And what are the likely impacts or yield penalties, percentage yield penalties with respect to those climatic hazards.
Okay, well, for the Adaptation Atlas and the African Adaptation Atlas, we're currently compiling a data set that's trying to integrate sort of bioclimatic thresholds for individual commodities, most of the ones in MapSpam. So this would use data from PAiCE et al, from EcoCrop, there's a Concern Worldwide publication with very detailed information in the peer-reviewed literature to try and come up with a list of crop-specific thresholds that relate to hazards. In India, I know the approach is that they're trying to do some sort of yield deviance decomposition in relation to climate. So again, I think this is the CIMIT, the Borlaug Institute BISA team, where they are looking at admin 2 level yields of different commodities and relating that to the experienced climate, and then drawing conclusions from modeling the impact of climate on experience yields to try and come up with specific empirical climate hazards that have influenced negatively influenced crop production in India. So they may well be able to kind of give crop-specific thresholds that really come from real-world data in India, which could be quite useful for this exercise.
That project is very recent initiative. It's just started, isn't it? You mean to say that?
Yes, the inception meeting was about 4 months ago, I think.
Yes, April. I was part of it actually.
Oh yeah, so you saw me there then. I can't see you, so it's like I can't recognize your face.
I thought you may be referring to some other thing. Now I got clarity. You are referring to the same one that happened in April in Delhi.
Excellent. Oh, super. So you can reach out to that team, and I mean, I'm sure they'd be like Pramod and Pradesh would be really keen to provide you with assistance, because that will give them a use case for the South Asia Adaptation Atlas and make the Gates Foundation very happy. And I assume the Gates Foundation is probably putting a lot of money into EIA as well. So if you can find linkages between different Gates Foundation projects, then we'll all be very happy.
Yes, the work is being initiated. It's just beginning. And regarding in this, what we are looking for PAiCE tool, are we looking for the future projected data of different climate models like CMIP 5, CMIP 6 models and all? Because hazards you are writing 2020 to 2040 somewhere as in the chart box. Is it that we are planning to take up the future climatic hazards based on different models, projected climate data?
Yeah, so I can handle that one in that. So there's a few things. We are not going to have perfect data to pre-populate the PAiCE tool. So we have to look at the best way that we can do it in a scientifically logical way. But it is framed in what we expect over the coming 10 years. So we would extrapolate out, say, from now to 2030, if that's where your particular data set is, or from now to 2040, whatever your time frame is, we would extrapolate that to understand over the next 10 years. There's not going to be perfect data sets that address that. There's going to be holes, as people have brought up. Maybe it's not crop specific, so you might have to take a data set, sit down with it as a group before that workshop and think, for this crop, with this data set, what does it mean in this context? So there's a little bit of work here, and I don't think we should expect that we will have perfect data sets to pre-populate, particularly module 2 of this. Production is one thing. There's lots of great statistics, but the reason why all of the work is being undertaken in the Climate Atlas and other is because this tends to be an area that is a bit more uncertain. So what I would say, just so we round this conversation out a little bit, is it's great to have Pete as part of this and providing support. And Pete also has connections for the different locations and regions. So once you identify a gap that you have in that pre-population process, particularly if you're outside of sub-Saharan Africa and you identify a gap, Pete may be able to or may not be able to point you in the right direction of some supporting data in that process. But I don't think we should expect that we have perfect data here for pre-population of these different modules. Do we have...
My point is whether whatever your next 10 years, what is the probability that how many years will be no impactful years, how many years like that you are taking? It's the best, just based on historical data, isn't it? What is the information we have from historical data?
No, well, the point is that over the next 10 years, we are going to feel the impacts of climate change more than we have in the previous 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. So in the context of climate change, we expect a change in climate to occur and be impactful over the next 10 years. That does not necessarily follow the historical pattern that has occurred over the previous 10, 20 or 30 years. So there's some adaptation that comes in terms of the data sets because this is prediction. There are more questions about what we can expect there.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Perfect. So we'll stop the conversation there around the data, but yeah, Pete is very approachable and available via email if you need additional support. So please reach out once you identify the gaps that you have, and definitely testify in Eastern and Southern Africa if we can get the boundaries of your production domains so that Pete can see what is available on his end there as well. All right, so what we will do now is we want to move into the session that thinks about how we're going to implement the different workshops. So part of the conversation now is more logistical in nature, and then we want to break into your rooms and then really discuss what you need in order to go ahead with these workshops. What I wanted to do is just before this, I was in a bit of an email exchange with the Vietnam group around what would a schedule look like for these workshops. So thank you, Anne. I'm not sure if I can see on the call, it's a bit hard with my different screens, but for starting the ball rolling there around what a schedule would look like. And the message that I had back to Anne, and this is just an example, is that we really need to make sure that there is enough time to actually complete the tool. So in the original version, there was only really about 2.5 hours to actually complete the tool. So if we think about logistically implementing the tool, for each one of of these, so to evaluate an adaptation option, which is this. Remembering you do this between 4 and 10 times in the tool, depending on how many adaptation options you select. It's going to take, I would say, a minimum of half an hour to work through and evaluate an adaptation option. So if you've got, say, 5 adaptation options, just doing that will take 5 hours without any interactions, discussions, lunch breaks, and without doing the pre-module 3.1, 3.2 and discussing the prior. So you really need to be strategic around how you're going to structure the workshop. So my encouragement would be that I know in certain locations and cultural sensitivities, you need a long lead in and you need presentations at the start and everything, but make sure you leave yourself enough time in order to actually get the tool done, because the worst thing you can do is get to, say, 4 p.m. and start working through the tea break and everybody's hasn't had a break and you're rushing to evaluate the last 2 and then it's not really participatory. So really have a think about what your day looks like if you're starting at, particularly in the locations where it's inappropriate to start, say, before 10 or 10:30. Think about what you're going to have to cut to make sure that you can fit a full schedule in there. The other thing is that you do want some discussion time and interaction time, particularly where you've got workshops where you're splitting into multiple tables. You still want to have some interaction and feedback time there as well. So you need to build time into your schedule for that. And particularly in that last 45 minutes to an hour of your workshop, making sure that you've got time to round everything up, to bring everything together and to see what you can learn from the different groups that are coming in as well. So I really wanted to stress that particularly for the regional leads and process facilitators, have a schedule that you want to plan out and share it with myself and with, well, particularly with me and Wanjiku, to make sure that there is enough time there to play out the tool. So that's just a note of caution. So the next thing we want to do now is I've set up some breakout rooms we've got 5 regions on the call, and we've got a few regional leads as well and otherwise. But what we're hoping is that there's enough regional leads, process and technical facilitators here that you can go into your groups. Will take, let's say, 20 minutes. Go in and just talk about from right now, where we are today, to when many of you are implementing workshops in even 2 or 3 weeks' time, up to 6, 7, 8 weeks' time. What do you need as leads and facilitators? What is your plan? Do you have everything in place? Do you need, for instance, there's been talk of people wanting translations, but nobody's emailed me nominating a translator for the tool. Some people have said that they're having trouble writing invitations. Do you need some promotional material? Do you have a slot in your workshop where you'd like me to record a video that talks about what the PAiCE tool does because I can't attend all the workshops? Do you need explanatory material? Do you need handouts? What other requests do you have? Thinking about, we've got to get from where we are right now to 2 or 3 weeks' time when you're standing in front of up to 30 or 40 people trying to lead them through this. So let's take 20 minutes now. I'm going to set up those rooms, have discussions. If your group takes less than 20, then just come back into the main room. And if you need more than 20, please type in the chat so that we can see it and we can plan accordingly, because I'm not sure how much each group will need. But what we want is then to come back here and for you to make your requests. I'm hoping that, I'm hoping Wanjiku's still here, I'll be here. I don't know if Pete can stay or not, but if you've got data requests, basically we're going to collate them and see what support we can provide back to your requests. Does anybody have any questions before we go into those breakout rooms? Okay. I will open them now. Hopefully this works, and see everybody in 20 minutes. So you should see a pop-up there, and you'll need to click that. And that should mean, I think it's just Wanjiku, Peter, Pete. Yeah, we're the only ones not assigned yet. And I didn't assign it specifically in case we needed to discuss anything while everybody's out. So yeah, were there things that you guys would like to discuss?
Yeah, for me, can you, sorry, I should have been paying more attention. You've probably said this in great detail and a lot of very well documented emails, which I have not read in great detail. So I apologize if I don't know the answer to this.
No problem.
But are the workshops, is it one workshop or is it kind of a series of workshops? Just going back to my question, if they start the process, they figure out, right, these are the key commodities, we've filled in our production statistics, or even you've pre-populated that from some of the information I provided. And then they start talking about, well, what are the climate risks that we're interested in? Like, is there like a one workshop where they'll be doing kind of the initial stages and then a follow-up after that, where they've got some time to gather the information they need to continue?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and particularly South Asia, we're having this discussion on how much can we do before the workshop versus how much needs to be, you know, collaboratively input as well. The suggestion that I've made during the training is you should be meeting with your regional lead, with process facilitators, and with people particularly within your CG centres to make sure that you've got the correct climate hazards to move forward with, not just guessing and making that. So it's not necessarily designed for, because the workshop will get too long, for those hazards to be identified in the workshop, but I've been really trying to stress on them to try and have an actual discussion beforehand to make sure that you've got an understanding and you're confident that you've selected those right hazards. And what I would hope is that that would then be able to feed to you well in advance of the workshops, to see what you could assist there. And you can say, well, I've got something for this, I don't have anything for that, and you know, so support in that way. That was the ambition. Before I go to Jordan, what I will say is that because unfortunately this has happened in holiday time, and particularly the regional leads have been very hard to get onto, I'm almost certain that that's happened nowhere at the moment. Yeah, Jordan. If you're speaking, you're still muted.
Yeah, no, sorry, I couldn't find the button. Yeah, so no, so thanks, and thanks again, Pete, for just, you know, doing all the work here. And just as a quick recap, so since it sounds like you know, the Climate Adaptation Atlas is just, you know, it makes the most sense to use that, at least for the Africa cases. What we've agreed is that if there's something that's not there and we, you know, my team can usefully step in at that point, that's what we'll do. But so we're kind of, you know, waiting to hear what, if anything, is missing. So I just wanted to kind of remind you of that, and remind you, Pete, don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything at all that we can contribute to this without, you know, getting in your way, of course. But yeah, so I guess along those lines, should I, or, you know, someone from like a, you know, a spatial person from our side try to participate in the meetings, in each of the meetings to try to catch kind of, you know, potential new data sets? Or what's your thinking there about the best use of time? Oh, sorry, I've got my camera's off. The best use of time with respect to the actual regional sessions. I'm just trying to be helpful here because, again, I feel a little bit bad that, you know, we're not able to actually do much more. But I think it makes sense to think about it this way. So.
My quick response before you go, Pete, is I would absolutely love any proactivity to kick this into gear. And if you had a willingness or people that would be willing to assist, it's not actually that many meetings. I'm hoping that it should be sort of one meeting for each of those 5 regions. And, you know, these meetings don't go 7 hours or anything like that. So I'm hoping it's not a huge time commitment there. And I think that many of them think that they might have the data that's appropriate for this, but I think when they actually sit down in front of it, they'll realize that the data that they have is not going to be appropriate. So I think that they're going to hit the wall at some stage when they actually do have these meetings. But Pete, it was really your question to answer, so I'll defer to you.
Yeah.
We can remind. There was a couple of things that Jordan said, and so can you remind me
It
what
makes sense.
the original question is?
Well, no, I mean, just to remind everyone that kind of that I and you know my team, such as it is or isn't, I mean, we're ready to jump in where necessary. So Pete, just if we can flag a data set that's not already there, or if there's one of these regional teams that needs some help, maybe that's the best way to do it. Without trying to duplicate what you've already got kind of set up in the adaptation atlas. So I guess the operational question is how best to catch and respond to those opportunities. Is it just to make sure that we're in those regional meetings, or should we try to be more proactive in the time leading up to those meetings, which will be difficult? I mean, this next month it's not a good month for other reasons.
Yeah, that is. September's like a god awful month. It's like everyone's come back from holiday, has a million things to do, and like the end of the year suddenly starts looming.
Well, and all these big meetings, so just endless meetings. So
so we can do what we can. I think one useful thing we could do is, I mean, there's no end of. There's portals out there. I think it's like Aquastat, is it? Or there's like I forget what the water atlas one is that I think Inwin's been heavily involved with. It provides lots of really good information about risks to irrigated systems. There's lots and lots of portals looking at hazards because it's relatively easy to classify and present information on those. So what we can maybe do is just start to put together a Google Doc or a shared document that the teams can refer to start signposting people to say, like, we don't have the capacity to answer all of your questions, but these are geographic spatial portals that could allow you to select areas and generate information to start populating those spreadsheets with. There's also a lot of I mean, I'm sure every center has got its like climate risk reports for this country or this production system. I just put sort of a link for the Alliance's climate risk profiles in there. These start to provide information about solutions as well, and evidence for solution and potential like impact for evidence for solutions. So I think if we could, I think our team's got quite broad knowledge, so we could start putting together that document and I pass it around our networks to say that, can you suggest anything to go in here? It could, that could be a very useful resource that starts facilitating the different groups to be able to get their own information as well.
Okay. So I think we should. So that's great. And Pete, I'm happy to help or even start that if that would make your life easier, like that kind of doc that we can share around. I think we should accompany it by just the caveat that, I mean, let's manage expectations. So just because there's a data set out there doesn't mean that, you can, we can't be a service provision unit without, I mean, we'll try, right? But, given kind of time constraints, just find a nice way to kind of remind people of that. But that might be a good way to get started. And then, it could be that a real useful output of the meeting, Brendan, I'm not sure if you've thought about this in much or how you think about this, but would be to identify data sets that may or may not exist yet, but that we should be investing in developing, right? That by itself could be a nice output for EIA, right? And kind of something to think about resourcing in the next business cycle.
No, I think that the two suggestions there are actually really excellent, not just from, for our purposes, because I wouldn't necessarily say that would be worth the effort just for this, but having a document that says these are the tools that are available. If you are asking these sorts of questions, I think that's a really useful output, and I'm sure EIA collectively would be stoked if that was something that could be relatively easily combined. But I particularly like the idea, Pete, as you're saying, of, well, we've got these networks. If this doesn't exist now, then just the simple collaboration and putting that together could be really powerful.
Yeah.
I, of course, do not speak on behalf of EIA as the little man in this process, but I can see the magic that exists there.
Okay. Cool. So Pete, I mean, would it help if I started that doc for you, or you, or not?
Yeah,
You know,
yes,
okay.
yes, it would help.
Okay,
It would definitely.
then I'll
You're volunteering
I'll
to
try
do something that I suggested. Great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm eager to do something, you know. So okay,
Yeah.
so we'll start that, send it to you, and then maybe we circulate it, and we can make it a living document. I don't know if we've got a space for living documents, but I guess somewhere on the shared drive we do. And then in terms of just being on standby, so yeah, anything that comes up, Pete, directly through you. Otherwise, I guess we'll also try to just be, on the sidelines of these of all the meetings, and see what we can, if we can catch and respond to opportunities that way. I mean, maybe that's it. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds super helpful. And what I was thinking was it wasn't actually that this is it was more like portals that allow a user to geographically summarize data sets, rather than us saying, oh, this data set's available, and then being like, but we don't we don't have time to analyze it for you. It's more something that's enable somebody who's not necessarily a technical data, like a data scientist or a technical specialist, at least have some geographic filter and be able to provide some information about an area, a country, some admin one units that they're interested in.
Okay, cool.
That sounds good. So there's three things that I took away then here. First one is, and apologies, Jordan, of not mentioning that you're also a resource available to the group there as well. So I'll mention that when we come back in. Second one is this idea that we want to put together a living doc, for lack of a better term, that identifies where, or portals that will enable data in the space that we're working in, particularly around the climate space. So it will be a work in progress, and it is not ready yet, but is something we're aiming to do to support some of this and beyond. And then the third one is just making clear that when they're having their individual regional discussions, please notify at least the four of us that you're going to have that, and where possible, we will try to find a way to collaborate in on that meeting. Obviously, if you give us 1 day's notice, it's not going to happen. But yeah, within reason, we will try and find a way to assist and to attend in that meeting. So those were the three key things there. Really good stuff as well. Wanjiku, did you have anything for the three of us, or anything else that you wanted to discuss while we're all here? You don't often get the three of us all in the same room.
I know. This is really special. No, I just was wondering whether we are, in terms of practicality, the workshops. I know East Africa hasn't quite given us the information we need on their workshops. The other regions have given tentative dates. Just practically, if there's anything you need support from us. That was one. Then I need to consult Bernard, but he was suggesting that there was something around value chains and better understanding. I think there was this discussion earlier on around understanding the value chains, or incorporating something like that in the workshops. I'm not sure what it was. Mandla had given me some input. So I just want to discuss this with Bernard when he's back, because I'm not clear. I don't quite remember or understand what he wanted. And then we can discuss it. Then lastly is we have a meeting tomorrow. I don't know what we want to get out of that meeting. Is there anything we should pay attention to? I was just waiting for this so that I can send a reminder to the regional leads.
Okay, so a few things there. The meeting tomorrow, I certainly don't have anything further to present tomorrow, and I think a lot of the regional leads are already on this call. So I'm not sure about the value of holding that meeting again tomorrow, but that's in your capable hands. In terms of the value chain things, the beauty of this is if Bernard was on this call and he suggested it, I wouldn't have the ability to push back as much as you can be my messenger here. In that it's already a very packed schedule for a one-day workshop, and I get concerned if we try and pack too much in here. So I have no idea what was planned within that.
That's a good response. I think for now we can say that and pick it. That's a good response. That's fine. And I feel I completely understand that. And I think this is the priority. So that's fine.
Yeah, so I just think we need to be realistic. Even getting a schedule from the Vietnam case study where they basically allocated 2 hours in the 6.5 or 7 hours to the actual tool. I think we just have to make clear that it's not something achievable and you need to allocate sufficient time. Yeah, but I think for the rest, I'm interested to hear when these groups come back in, how much of their concern is data pre-population, how much is we haven't sent our invitations out yet and we don't have clearance from EIA or anything. I have no idea what's going to come out of the next half an hour when they return into the room, which is both exciting and scary at the same time. But yeah, let's give the floor to them and see where they perceive the shortcomings are.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so perhaps we can drop and let's see how the meeting progresses and make a decision on tomorrow's meeting by the end of this meeting.
Yeah. Again, it might depend on what comes out where they all say, I've got absolutely no money to run this workshop, or
Yes.
I logistically no idea what will come out. So
yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break to rest my voice, and then I'm going to call everybody back in. So feel free to take a little break, guys. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Just making sure that I've closed all of those rooms. So, okay. All right, so I'm not sure how everybody went. It was quite a short time, but what we have time for now is just to hear from each of the 5 regions. We'd like to keep it less than 5 minutes a region, otherwise it will expand out. If you've got a nominated reporter or something like that. But what we would like to hear specifically are what are the things that are in the way for your workshops to be implemented? What do you need from the global teams in terms of, is it data, is it, you know, certain promotional materials or other things? Is it support in planning the schedule? What is it that you need? Basically, any feedback that you have, any requests that you need to make sure that you can get your workshops done. Is there a region that wants to volunteer to go first? Okay, I will voluntold then. And Sawana is unfortunately at the top of my list. So somebody from Sawana like to report back?
Hi, this is Ajit from Egypt. I'm also planning to involve as a process coordinator, facilitator. And so currently I'm leading the Egypt use case under the Excellence in Agronomy. So I just wanted to ask and get what are your thoughts on when we present or when we open the floor for discussion and introduce the day with the stakeholders, what should be our narrative on what is that we are trying to do in this particular stakeholder consultation with the PAiCE tool? What is different from the first business cycle, and what is the new thing that we are trying to get from them through the PAiCE engagement? So I'm trying to get your insights so that we could use this narrative while discussing with the stakeholders. Thanks.
Thanks, Ajit. And I think that comes back, if I'm to reword what you've said as a request to the global team, that is that you need a clear set of talking points or information that guide the introduction and also guide the invitation to make sure that participants understand why they're attending, what PAiCE does, what they get out of this, and what it means going forward. So I can take that as an action point that says that some clear talking points and guidelines are made available to each facilitator, such that you can clearly introduce purpose and context of the meeting. Is that correct? Or interpret correctly?
Exactly. That's right. That's right.
Was there anything else?
What I was thinking is that we are trying to have a systems approach in our understanding of climate adaptation, and we are trying to synthesize the material or synthesize opinion that are diverse and coming from different types of stakeholders. And we didn't have a systems approach in the first business cycle, but now we want to do that.
Exactly, and so that will form part of that. A question to you, would you as facilitators want to deliver that yourselves in your local languages, etc., or would you want something, say, pre-recorded from Bernard or Job or myself that explains that? But obviously then it's limited by language. What do you think you would want in Siwana?
In Siwana, we will use Arabic as the main language of communication, but definitely there will be occasions where English will be used, but definitely we will have translators in any case. Yeah. Okay,
so it sounds like you would prefer that to be delivered by yourself or Samar, or however you're doing your workshops, rather than a centrally deployed video or something.
It will be better. It will be better to have the central pre-recorded message from Bernard or you, And further to that, we will also add something to it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. With say 2 more minutes that you have the floor from Siwana, are there other constraints or requests that you'd like to make?
Summer, anything else?
No, that's it. I have nothing to add. Thanks.
We were also thinking about getting some promotional material from PAiCE in the form of a brochure or something like that, so that we can distribute this material when we invite the stakeholders, or just 1 week before the actual event day, so that they come prepared mentally, what is what they are going to expect.
Perfect. So there's that very short 1 minute video, but I realize it's it's not very useful. But we can look into some like a printout or something, and then you guys could take it and translate it as needed or otherwise. But I can list that as a potential action point also, as around probably like a 1-page information printout, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect.
Thank
Cool.
you.
All right. Thanks, Siwana. And that was relatively easy. I hope that all of the other regions are like that. We will move to the next closest region, which would be West Central Africa.
Yes, so our team mainly from the Ghana platform. The other team is not there, but so in the Ghana platform, we raise the first one, because you already mentioned this one. It's good to have a slide deck, standard slide for the introduction of the workshops. My thinking is we can have this material that can be used by regional lead or a process facilitator, or by the global team, depending on the availability of the individuals, availability of these teams. It's good to have this standard template on what we are going to do, and then it will be used for the introduction of the events. Of course, then if we have the promotional material, so it's good. That's one. The second one is on the statistics. Still, the team is going to look what Peter extracted, and then see if we need follow-up request, or if we can change by the national statistics. The challenge is this kind of data has to be linked with the national data that the government is using for planning. So if we can have or replace this data with the national data, that's the first priority. If not, we use the global data, but we are going to have a follow-up question or request for Peter on that. And along that line, there was this question, for example, for Ghana, cereal legume mixed system, in the statistics, the roots and the other crops are the dominant in that one. But the platform is cereal and legume, and it was started from, one of the use case, the Ghana GAIP is on maize, the other use case, soybean. So the intention was to combine the cereal and the legume. So now, are we going to, focus only on cereal legume, or any crops, including the roots and so in the platform? Then when we add, when we populate the Excel, that will have a big difference. So then also, when you see the rice platform, are we going to only consider rice, or the statistics is just about rice, and then we are not going to have the other crop statistics, and also the risk will be only for the rice? So these are still need to be clear, and we need to agree on those. One last comment, maybe is that is from myself. For some platform, they are thinking to have a follow-up or one last session to update and to ask you some questions, and also if you can recap some of the tools. So maybe we can have one last session on the tools, especially for a new person. We bring one person on board for the Acclim platform, and we we thought he's going to help us with the technicalities of the tool. So he's attending the YouTube, but we are hoping that you can have one day, just to recap and if there is issue around that. So these are some of the questions that we discussed.
Excellent. Thank you, Ulatal, and perfect timing on the 4 minute to give me 1 minute to reply. A few things here. So your question around platforms versus essentially platforms versus production domain. So the tool is designed as a system analysis of the production domain. So it weights according to the proportionality of crops. So, and this is the conversation I've had with Ali with Africa Rice as well, around do we run the tool for a system, or if we're only interested in rice, do we run it for rice? And my initial reaction is it should be run at a system level, despite what your platform was focused on. Part of the purpose of this is to make sure that we are working correctly at a systems level. However, within that, you've got to understand your context best. So if you want to focus singularly at a crop or otherwise, let's have that discussion. And I think that comes back to something that I wanted to round out and I'll return to is it would be great if you plan yourselves a meeting for your workshops in advance and invite Jordan, Pete, and I, like an online call, and Wanjiku, so that we can be in on that discussion and you can ask any of these final things. So, this for the West Africa rice platform, this is how we're going to structure the tool. Is this okay? Et cetera, et cetera. So, and when you plan that meeting, be mindful of time zones because we are split across many time zones as well. We will do our best to attend that, but we also can't do it if you give us 1 day notice as well. So I suggest make sure you plan out a pre-meeting with regional lead and process and technical facilitators just for your region and invite us and we can finalize these details so that there is no more confusion on that front. As to your training point, yes, everything is up on YouTube. What I would say is that I can make a time slot available if people want that. Like for final clarifications, or people can just email me, say, I am new to this. I've just done the online course. Can we meet for 20 minutes, 15 minutes and discuss some things? And I can arrange a one-on-one time. The same with people that have come through the training program. If you've still got clarifications, if you still have problems, then just email me and we can have that conversation as well. But yes, I'm not just leaving now that I've delivered the training. Still very much here to provide that guidance. I think that hit on most of them. Mulata, did I miss anything?
On the slides, we need to prepare slides, a template.
Yes.
That can work for all.
So the action points that I took are a standard slide deck. The need to follow up on the data with Pete and Jordan, and then making myself available for the training there as well. So those are the action points.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right, moving across to Eastern and Southern Africa for 5 minutes, Tesfaye, or whoever you have assigned.
It's me, Brendan. So we had a language issue, one case in Southern Africa, especially for Ethiopia. For now, I think we can do with English, but if needed, maybe at some point we could go for local languages. But we need Portuguese for Mozambique. English is not so popular there. So how can we do that? Maybe we talk to the use case coordinators, or can we have someone to be assigned from the global team? That's one concern. We obviously need a language translation, a Portuguese version there, and we also discussed about the source of data, especially the global data source that we should use. Like you said earlier, if we have more accurate local data, subnational data, of course we go for that, but that is mostly unlikely, and we might end up using this global aggregate data. So what is the data source to just keep consistent across regions? I see someone shared here spam data from 2017. Is that the one we go with, or do we have other options, the FAO or those ones, to just have views on that? And I think you also asked us about the timelines, and we are planning to have the technical working group. We planned a couple of times. It didn't happen because we include people from different institutions, the national system, the CG, and the demand partners, and it was a bit not easy to get all at the same time. But we plan to have both of the meetings, the Eastern Africa one and the Southern Africa one, soon. So maybe we will come back with questions after that, probably before the big meeting and between the small, the working group meeting. We expect some questions and some clarification issues, and for that we will come back. Otherwise, it seems okay for now. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Tesfaye. So a few things. Talking about Portuguese there, I guess the question would be, could we do some variant of Chichewa? Like if you're doing in that triangle, would that be more appropriate? Or whatever it is that you decide on language, what it's set up and we can create a Portuguese version. All I need is a translator to be linked with me, and I'll provide them that. So, and I think the same still goes back to Siwana. You didn't mention it, but if you want it in Arabic, you need to link me with a translator. I don't have the capacity or funds or anything to source that. So you need to link me with them, and I'll provide the translator that. In terms of data, so the most important thing is to get your boundaries set, and then to connect with Peter and Jordan and have that discussion. And again, what I would say is you've got your meetings planned. So yourself, Gizachow, and the ones in Southern Africa, try and invite us to those meetings so we can talk this out with you, and Pete can say, here's what can and can't be done, etc. So it's just about having that communication channel and making sure we can help you in that sense. So I'm adding translation to the things that need to be done. Did I miss anything else there, Tesfaye?
You did not, but I missed one thing. Maybe in terms of the number of days for the meeting, because we have the two papers, maybe shall we plan for two? Because maybe the 1 day is just for one of the strategic papers, and we have to do both. Logistically, that is much easier, and try to get some overlapping participants from regions so that it becomes easier, especially, for example, we are having the technical facilitators moving around. We don't need to make a lot of travels. Instead, maybe make it two. Do you think that works?
Now, in regional papers, you're talking about climate for one and a production constraint for two, or remind me which ones you're talking about there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about that, but make it consecutive days. So in the end, we end up having 2 days.
I can admit right now that the production constraint tool will not be ready in the next few weeks. So it won't be feasible to run them together. There's also been a discussion at the higher level around how to do that, and the conclusion was that it's a bit risky to hold back-to-back meetings because of the similarities in tool, but because they are different and need to be run, it can become a bit repetitive as well. So I would say the plan at the moment is to complete the climate aspect, the climate paper, and then transition to the production constraints. Because of there's some overlap, we don't want to get repetitive, and there might be different people that we need to look at in that room as well.
Okay. No, very enough. Good. Thank you.
We also hope that the technical and process facilitators are hopefully based in the region. I know Gizachu, you might be doing both, but it shouldn't be heavy travel burdens in that sense. Obviously, you've got the travel to workshop if you're doing it in the Chinyanga Triangle or whatever, and you've got to cross borders and sometimes visas and everything. But yeah, that's it's probably unavoidable at the moment because that production constraint tool won't be ready. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move now to South Asia.
Can I speak?
Yeah, please go ahead, Raju.
Okay, just we have two, three things. First of all, the process of workshop, how to conduct this. You are referring that there's some subgroups are to be made. So 3 subgroups or something like that. So after that, each subgroup means any consensus purpose, we should bring all the groups and then put in the same one room and then bring consensus, or you want variability from one group to another group. That is one thing. How to aggregate these results. And so another thing, when we are working out, there could be some possibility of changing the options. So we should go ahead with entering the things on the tool. So after going to the next next sheet, so they may get something and then they go back to these kind of things happen in workshops. So means revalidation, rethinking after reconsideration of some options given in the previous sheet. So because as of now, those options are not available, it is only one unidirectional. You are asking us to don't go back. So that's is it possible to include, or what is the way out to address this issue? And then another thing, you some options also. So we want to have, can you give the scoring given to each option, like some menu-driven options are there, or else some categories are there, like what are the things that is going into the software for value, so that we can understand better the back-end process and we can guide whatever inputs required from stakeholders in the workshop. Like something I could understand that when you are making yield impacts, so 0 to 25%, 25 to 75%, you took mid value of that category. I understand. So similarly, in feasibility or scalability in module 3, so you have given a lot of menu-driven drop-down options. So what is the score you are assigning to a particular option? If you understand that, so we can better elicit information from the experts or stakeholders. That is another thing. Then regarding the data issues, one is regarding we are having climate data, daily scale, historical data, all the things. We are facing some issues regarding finalizing the thresholds, commodity specific thresholds. So for example, excessive rainfall is there, or else drought is there. So how many days drought, or what kind of intensity of drought, or intensity rainfall, extreme rainfall is what intensity for how much duration. So these things, or if temperature is there, so the minimum temperature below which it can cause yield impact on, let us say wheat, or the maximum temperature above, over and above which it can cause impact, yield impact on rice, let us say in some particular season. So we are looking for those thresholds. Pardon? Dr. Virendra, want to add something?
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Then, so these thresholds, so now we are looking and trying to find. So if this information is available, and along with this, so with so and so threshold, with so and so intensity and duration, combination of a hazard can cause this much yield impact. So what is the likely impact? That too, you made some 3 groups, broad groups. Either is it possible to make 4 groups instead of 3? Like up to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and more than 75. Like mild, moderate, severe, and catastrophic. Or else another option is, if you have given in module 3, what is the percentage of field loss avoided? You are asking us 10%, 20%, 30% is open-ended. So can we put that kind of thing here, so that where precise information is available, we can put that exact value like 30%, 20%, 40%, instead of putting in the range. So it becomes too obscure. So these are the points just I want to share. And regarding tool also, if one cleaner version is there, So some software issues also we are facing. As already Ajit mentioned that to get long list from 3.1 to 3.2 when we are going from forward. So these are the issues we are right now having for India. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Raju. A few things to work through there. So I'm putting on my action list some guidance for the subgroups that you have in your workshop, as in if you have 30 people in the room, how do you divide? And then around aggregation of results. So I need to provide some guidance for you guys. The very quick response to that is that when, so you might have 4 or 5 files in the room. That last hour, you want each group to present, and that in your workshop, that's the aggregation that you get. You send the files back to me, and then I will work on a common aggregate, but it won't happen at workshop time. But I will send a guidance note on how that works. In terms of your return and revalidation and changing, the tool is designed in a linear way, and I realize that's not ideal, but that is the way that this Excel macro works. So it's on like that. That's like a development leap in the tool to overcome that, and that development leap won't come in by the time that these workshops are done. But it is on. It's noted. It's a limitation, and it's on the radar for what a version leap would do. I think we've gone through, version 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. That would be the version 3 leap, and it's not something that will happen, but it is on the radar. So I hear you. It is a constraint, but it's not something that can be done in the next few weeks. In terms of how the tool works, I'm happy to have that conversation with process and technical facilitators around how the tool works. I'd be really hesitant to start bringing up the mechanisms of the tool at the workshop. 1, because you'll lose a lot of time. 2, because it will create discussion, but not all of that discussion is useful because you won't be able to amend the tool in the workshop. So I'm happy to have the discussion with the people that have taken the training around how the tool works, but I think it's really problematic to put that up in the workshop because it will just create discussion that's not meaningful to the end point that we need to get to. If you disagree with that, then we can have another chat outside of this around that. In terms of data documentation, the important thing is that we have to find a way to populate it. There's not going to be perfect data sets, but in each and every module and submodule, there is a workshop notes section. And I think that really needs to be used by everybody to say, for this particular data point, we really couldn't find consensus, so we're guessing, in the answer to this particular one. Or the data source for this came from here, we're not so sure about it. We need to have those notes in there for that process, particularly as an academic process in understanding, where were we not so sure in the data points that we put in and where were we sure. So this is just a cry to say, please use the workshop notes section in each of those modules. That's what it's there for, to document that. And maybe once it comes back to me, or maybe, a few weeks or months, that we actually are able to then amend some of those and work through it. Maybe when we have that version 3 where backtracking is not a problem. And yes, I acknowledge that for some reason, there's only a few laptops that have this issue in this 3.1 to 3.2 long list to short list. I believe it's a version issue with Microsoft Office. I'll continue to investigate with those that are having the problem as to why that's not working. When I've created some other macros, it's specifically because the Microsoft Office version is like a regional version, or it's a version that's not compatible with a particular macro that's used. So I will investigate that directly with you guys. I hope that that's everything.
Is it the better way to just work on some kind of printouts, taking these options, and there we can cut down and change the options? After that, once the consensus comes up in the subgroup, then we can enter in that tool. Do you suggest otherwise? Because you are telling it is unidirectional. Flow is linear.
The tool is unidirectional at points, and that's whether the points are noted in the tool. It's because that there is sort and filter functions And when you change a number, it will change the sort and filter. So there's not an easy way around that in its current form.
So as a solution, because editing options are not available, so can we work out on paper with the pen, whatever printout options, whatever tool, some part we take printout and give it to the participants, so they can think and they can strike off and again write something, so they can finalize once the things are ready. So after that, feeding into that tool is, I mean, that's what I'm asking. That is the approach, right approach to handle this problem.
Let me think about it. Part of the problem is that because of the logic of the tool, things are inserted based on things before. So it's really hard to create a printout option because it's pre-populated from things that come previously. So it is
interactively generated.
Yeah, to print out modules in advance of what is previously filled is not really possible. For instance, if you add an additional crop, it changes everything because you've already answered crop by hazard. So then if you go back and add additional crop, it means you have to go through the whole tool because each time that crop comes up, you need to answer data for it. So it's a little bit more complex than just a printed list.
Okay, otherwise we'll have some 3-4 laptops and one will keep it for the end and remaining 1 or 2 laptops for these the corrections and all we'll use. That's
a possible solution as well. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I added 5 or 6 things to the to-do list, which my to-do list is now 11 long. Let's go to Southeast Asia and see how many they've got to add, and that's the last region, and then we'll wrap up the call. So Southeast Asia.
Hi, Brandon. It's Rika. Yeah. So for us, 2 main things on the climate risk part. So we started this discussion. Yeah, we understand that maybe Peter might not have data for Southeast Asia. I don't know, but if there is, we'd be happy to have that. At the moment, we will use the risk mapping from Asian Mega Delta Initiative. That will be our kind of a go-to document for the risk mapping, but the approach is quite different. So there's also a lot then of like translation or interpretation from the experts themselves. So it would also be nice if, in case Peter has some data for Southeast Asia, particularly Mekong Delta of Cambodia and Mekong Delta of Vietnam. These are our focus areas. So then logistically, yeah, translation, I've sent you an email, both Cambodia and Vietnamese translations. And then we discussed the potential for hybrid if in case some of our stakeholders really cannot come. Yeah, whether that's possible. One thought is then perhaps one group will be facilitated online, the breakout group. Then they can contribute in that way. So yeah, that's the one. And then including on the narrative that Ajit asked earlier, if we can also highlight some points that like what can the national stakeholders, particularly policymakers, get out of the insights that are derived here, if we can emphasize that. Then splitting this into a 2-day workshop, which for us might be necessary. Well, at least some discussions on the pre-populated module with probably a subset of the workshop participants that are coming. So that's our discussion.
Thanks. So I can see that both Jordan and Peter have written something in the chat around there, and I'll let them reply after I go. A few things. So translations, no problem. Just email me who the translator is, and I'll set that up. Hybrid rooms. Look, you can try. I don't think that it will work very well because it's meant to be discussive as well. If that's the only option that you have, then we can try. It will take a very skilled facilitator to make sure that it goes well. Whenever I've done all days Zoom or Teams meetings, I've never come away feeling energized, which I hope others will come away in person feeling energized. But if that's your only option, then we can look into how that would go. You mentioned a 2-day meeting instead of a 1-day meeting. I 100% have no problem with that, but I'm also not in charge of your budgets or any of your logistics or anything like that. If you think that that's a feasible option, it's much better to do it over 2 days, particularly if you want to go over modules 1 and 2 in that same day. So if you have the capacity to hold it over 2 days and everybody is happy to come for 2 days, from my end, I have absolutely no objection to that. I will leave that with all of you to work out there. Pete, Jordan, did you have anything other than what you've typed to add about Southeast Asia?
No, I mean, other than if that's something you need to think about, Rika, or discuss with your team, maybe put together, review what you've got available, and then let us know kind of what's missing, and then we can respond concretely about whether or not we can assemble that and how best to do that, right? So we want to know what kind of what the administrative units are within the Mekong Delta countries that, just figure out which geographies we're actually looking at. And then, Pete's also referred you to someone. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Pete.
I know someone within my extended team has been working to provide spatial information for something under the Asia Megadeltas initiative that did involve it was the intersection of vulnerability and climate risk for certain commodities in the Delta. So I believe they do have some climate risk layers. They weren't created within the Alliance, so I don't know more than that. But James Giles has been coordinating our efforts, so you could reach out to him. I believe he's in the Vietnam office of the Alliance.
Great,
Thank you,
thanks.
yes. We were indeed planning to use the risk maps from Asian Megadelta. So AMD is our basis. I was just checking if there were other data that was available.
Well, there surely are, but rather than, I guess, the quickest, the easiest way to track everything down would just be if you, since you know the Asia Megadelta Initiative data set, if you're saying, well, we don't have data on, I don't know, production for these crops, and we can pull that up from SPAM, or if we need whatever it is, but because there's lots of different sources out there, but just to, come up with the prioritized kind of gaps would be really useful.
Well noted, Jordan. I'll discuss it with both groups. Thanks.
Okay.
Excellent. I'm also aware we don't want to go overtime here, and 2 hours is a long meeting. So I promise you that I have written down all of the action points, and I'll document that and work on those and work out how we're going to do them. I think I've got about 14 action points. So thank you everybody for those. Just in closing, please we can only assist you if we know that you've found a constraint that you think we can help with. So please reach out to Pete and Jordan on the data side, to Wanjiku, and particularly to myself on the tool side, how we can assist to make sure these workshops are successful workshops. I would also say, though, temper your expectation. If you invite us with only a day's notice, it's really hard for us. So the more notice that you can give, the more assistance that we can provide there. We are also, and by we I mean Pete and Jordan have also suggested that they are putting, or will attempt to put together a guidance sheet around the different tools that are available in order to help populate some of this data. So the idea being that where does one even begin? Not just for our project, but for people who are thinking about this, where do I go for these sorts of data? What portals exist? What data is there? So that is something that we are looking into. It's not started yet, but something that will come as well that might be of use. Please reach out to us for the meetings that you'll have at your own individual levels. And otherwise, I think that, just please make sure Wanjiku and I particularly know what's going on in your particular locations, and data-wise for Jordan and for Pete, if I didn't give Jordan a fair chance before to speak as well, but Jordan is also out there trying to help with some of this, working in combination with Pete as well. So on the data side, you've got two really great assets there. So please reach out if you're seeing problems. I think that's all from me. I know that there's some questions that have come up in the chat. It's really hard for me to answer them as I'm talking, but please send me emails, particularly around the tool if you're having problems with the tool or anything like that. The final tool will either come out this Friday or Monday. It will be sent there. If you're not part of the WhatsApp group, please email me so I'll get you a part of that WhatsApp group as well. And I think I will hand over now to Wanjiku for any parting remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. I just had a question for the regional leads on the call. We're scheduled to have a meeting tomorrow. I get a sense that things seem to be in good motion. I just wanted to see whether we need to have that meeting or you can use that time to plan and prepare for the workshops. Wuletau is here, Tesfai.
Maybe I don't know, unless you have a specific objective to achieve with that meeting. On my side, it's okay. Maybe we take time to prepare for the technical working group meeting next week. If there is nothing special on your side.
Okay, nothing special, but let me consult with Job just in case there's, it would be more administrative, wanting to understand that we are all okay in terms of workshops, you have everything you need. That would be what would be wanting to establish. Okay.
I think it's okay. We organize ourselves at the workshop at the platform level, and then we can push this agenda the later stage.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Brandon. I'm done. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Please reach out, Wanjiku, myself, Jordan, Pete, if you've got issues. Otherwise, have great mornings, afternoons, evenings, nights, wherever you are. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brandon. Great facilitation.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very good, to the point. Keeping us on track. I like it.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.